I'm Max Keiser, and this is the Keiser Report. You know, we've been talking about on this show for weeks the fact that all those banksters on Wall Street are basically engaged in racketeering and fraud. Now the SEC has a suit pending against Goldman Sachs alleging fraud. And of course, Lloyd Blankfein at Goldman Sachs thinks he's doing God's work. And what has God said? The volcano in Iceland has spoken to Lloyd Blankfein. Look at this video. It's spewing smoke and bits of glass, and it's covering all the countries that were engaged in Blankfein's massive alleged fraud scheme. And look, it's sparing down there in Greece, Spain, Portugal. Those countries were spared by the dust cloud and the ash cloud. What does that tell you, Lloyd, about what God has to say to you? Stacy Herbert, once again, welcome to the Keiser Report.
Max, actually a viewer of this program, John E., he sent in this his observation that all of the pig nations, the so-called pigs, as described by Goldman Sachs, by the way, they were all being spared the volcanic ash cloud.
Well, I've got a volcano right here, actually, as you can see.
Are you saying that the volcano is demanding a sacrifice?
Yes, the volcano is actually demanding that bankers be sacrificed to it as a way to appease the god who's quite upset that Blankfein used his name in vain. Here's Blankfein now. Oh, into the volcano he goes. Oh, here's Timmy Geithner, pirate. Here's a pirate, Timmy Geithner. Oh, into the volcano you go, Geithner.
The financial meltdown gods. So, well, speaking of Goldman Sachs, Lloyd Blankfein, and their fraud, I have a headline here. UK's Brown wants investigation into Goldman Sachs. This is Gordon Brown, and he says this: I am shocked at this moral bankruptcy. This is probably one of the worst cases that we have seen. He is totally shocked that his country, which provides safe haven to financial fraud from all over the world, that this is happening.
I am shocked, Rick, that gambling has gone on in this establishment. It's like Claude Rains in Casablanca. Then, of course, he got his winnings after that, didn't he?
Yeah, of course. I guess somebody needs to hand Gordon Brown the fraudulent CDO paper.
Gordon Brown, into the volcano you go. I say, forget I say. They're never going to pay you now.
Well, the next headline remains in the UK. RBS lost £545 million in alleged Goldman fraud. So this is Royal Bank of Scotland, which is now 84% owned by the British taxpayer, was the biggest victim of Goldman Sachs' alleged subprime mortgage fraud. And on August 7th, 2008, just 2 months before Royal Bank of Scotland had to go to the government and the taxpayer for a bailout, they transferred $841 million to John Paulson, who was the winning side of this bet against his own CDO, which he had created.
Well, it's so obviously fraudulent. I mean, you know, this SEC case is just going to unleash an army of lawyers on and open a can of whooping.
Well, it's so allegedly fraudulent.
Yeah, right.
And let's see, by the way, if that, extradition treaty, which the U.S. has been calling all sorts of bankers and having all sorts of people extradited to the U.S., whether or not the U.K. will ever get some reciprocity back.
Reciprocity. My strategy for Goldman is this, Stacy Herbert. What they need to do is they need to take fraud public on the New York Stock Exchange and do a massive underwriting and allow people in America and the UK to buy into shares of fraud and thus compromise and implicate everybody. Or, as a matter of fact, put the shares of fraud into the Social Security system or put them into everyone's pension account more than they're already in people's pension account. This way people will not be motivated to prosecute Goldman because they themselves will own some of the fraud.
That's an interesting idea. But Gordon Brown says, I want the Financial Services Authority to investigate it immediately. Now Germany may go after Goldman Sachs for duping one of its banks. So of the $1 billion fraud, $841 million was owned by Royal Bank of Scotland. The other $150 million was owned by IKB Bank, which is also bailed out by the German taxpayer. Are they going to really do anything about it? Check out this headline. Meet America's ambassador to Germany. Guess which fraud-accused bank he used to work for? That's right. The American ambassador to Germany was the former head of Goldman Sachs in Germany.
Remember during the Lehman collapse, there were Germans on the street protesting against Lehman, and they had lost just a few bucks in their pension accounts. Now it's just wholesale, problems straight up and down throughout the entire German economy, undermining the very core of the economy. And the people should really take note of this and join their brothers and sisters in Greece. Don't pick on your brothers and sisters in Greece because they were suckered by Goldman back in 2000. That's why they're in the problem that they're in. You've been victimized by Goldman too. You and Greece ought to come together to fight the enemy, Goldman. You see, Goldman's your common enemy. Iceland, Greece, Germany, fight the bad guy. Don't fight each other.
Well, that brings up the fact that Goldman related to Greece is also why Angela Merkel and the German political class are angry with Goldman, is that they blame them for causing this crisis which in the euro area. And remember, the other person involved with the Greece story was John Paulson. John Paulson traveled to Athens with Goldman Sachs, who were unique in knowing that Greece had this hidden debt. And so why did John Paulson suddenly, after a private meeting with Goldman Sachs there in Athens, to which there are no notes, no emails going back and forth, who knows what was said, but clearly after that meeting he did take out credit default swaps, betting against Greek debt.
They're financial arsonists, like the mafia. They target a dry cleaning shop or a pizza joint or Greece. They load it up full of debt. They take the insurance money after they bust it out and burn it to the ground. They're just arsonists. They're financial arsonists. There's nothing more elegant about it than that. Goldman Sachs.
Well, so I said that, there's that revolving door between Wall Street and Congress, and the same in London. But, the politicians pretend to be shocked that all this fraud was going on when they themselves are the ones that totally deregulated this and gave them safe haven. And this takes me to the next headline. Congressmen urge dramatic expansion of Goldman investigation, demand big payback to AIG. But, we're always talking about these show trials, show arrests, and this could just be a show, civil suit with no teeth. But this is Representatives Elijah E. Cummings, Democrat of Maryland, and Peter DeFazio, Democrat of Oregon. So they are urging the SEC to look into Goldman deals with AIG. Any deals that AIG insured, they want to see if they can claw back that money. And they're asking kindly the SEC to refer this Goldman case to the Department of Justice, who actually have the authority to put some people behind bars.
What about some enterprising young politician like Andrew Cuomo? He could, remember Giuliani during the Mike Milken case of the 80s. He made his political bones on taking down Mike Milken and Drexel Burnham Lambert. Andrew Cuomo, who's down there in District, whatever it is, in the city of New York, can use this as a springboard for his political ambitions. Go for it, Andrew. We'll give you all the background information you need. Go after the bad guys.
Well, there is one attorney general. The attorney generals have the ability, as you say, to prosecute them. And there's Richard Blumenthal of Connecticut. He's attorney general, hoping to become senator in Connecticut. He's running against Peter Schiff. He said that he has begun a review of the Goldman case. And he says a key question is whether this is an isolated incident or part of a pattern of investment banks colluding with hedge funds to purposely tank securities they created and sold to unwitting investors. Now, with that, I want to read the quote in an email in the SEC complaint from Fabrice Torre, the 31-year-old VP of Goldman Sachs, who is also named in the suit. He said, quote, "The whole building is about to collapse. Only potential survivor, the fabulous Fab," who he calls himself, standing in the middle of all these complex, highly leveraged, exotic trades he created without necessarily understanding all of the implications of these monstrosities.
Look, of course the hedge funds are colluding. Look, Goldman Sachs, they're in too many businesses. They're on every side of every trade. And this, by definition, will result in them trading against their own customers. It's just, it's as night follows day. If you jump into a pool, you're going to get wet. If you represent all parties on every side of a transaction, someone's going to be the loser. This is why it's insane to allow these banks to have become these monstrosities that have arisen from the ashes of 9/11, like bankzillas. They're stalking Wall Street and the world, with their flame-throwing agenda of destroying anything that gets in their way of a Christmas bonus.
And finally, Max,
yeah.
Speaking of shocks in which nobody could have predicted anything, let's go to the prediction markets, because the political prediction markets have totally shocked the currency markets. The first chart you can see, the pound sterling is diving. Why? Check out the second chart, this political prediction chart from Betfair.com, the chances of conservative majority diving at the same pace, the same rapid decline. And this is following the first ever televised political debates in the United Kingdom. There's been a surprise winner in this, as perceived by the population, and that's the Liberal Democrat leader, Nick Clegg.
I always like that, Nick Clegg. All right, Stacy Herbert, thanks so much again for being on the Keiser Report.
Thank you, Max.
Don't go away. When we come back, we're actually going to go to London and find out what's going on there. Stay tuned.
Of 9/11, we will not allow a madrasa to crop up and then spread all over the country.
Virtually all terrorists today are Muslim.
Do we have the right to make such provocative statements? And do Muslim schools have the right to exist? Intifada, New York City, on RT. Every month we give you the future. We help you understand how we'll get there and what tomorrow will bring. The best in science and technology from across Russia and around the world. Join us for Technology Update on RT.
All right, welcome back to the Keiser Report. Now it's time to go to Afshin Rattansi, our guest. He's the author of The Dream of the Decade, a fantastic novel. Pick it up on Amazon. And he's also the co-host of Rattansi and Ridley on Press TV. He's a former chief risk analyst at Lloyd's of London. Afshin, welcome to the show.
Glad to be on it, Max.
Now, Afshin Rattansi, the pound sterling there in the UK is getting absolutely hammered in the markets, mirroring the collapse in the chances of a conservative majority witnessed on the political prediction markets. Now, for those who might not have heard about all this, tell us about the dramatic changes in the UK politics over the past week.
Well, over in the United States, in other countries, in Iran, there were debates between prospective political leaders. Britain has never had one up until about a couple of weeks ago, and they're still going on. And it seems that suddenly this third party, which used to be in power under the name Liberal Party about 100 years ago or more, is in the lead in the polls. So everyone's all very excited that it's a three-horse race. But as to whether that's affecting the pound sterling, well, I think probably too early to say at the moment. Aren't all the traders picking a currency one month and then picking another one the other?
Yeah, exactly. It's this kind of merry-go-round with attacking one currency and then the other. And yeah, you're right. In the 1960s in America, of course, they had the Kennedy-Nixon debate, which was the beginning of televised debates. And finally, in the UK in the year 2010, they're finally up to doing televised debates. But it does seem to be having a profound impact. As you point out, the third party, the Liberal Democrats. Let's look at some of the headlines in the UK with Nick Clegg, who is the Liberal Democrat leader. It says he's nicked the top spot. Historic poll puts the Liberals in front for the first time. He's more popular than Churchill. Despite the surge in popularity, there's no way the Liberal Democrats could win a majority, however. So explain that a little bit.
Here, it's the swing. So even if the Liberal Democrats are higher in the poll ratings, it depends on its geographical distribution, so that it doesn't matter if it's in the lead, because the Tories and the Labour Party will always have around 30% of the votes and will always get those number of seats, so the theory goes. And thus, even though the Liberal Democrats would do better, they will win on the swing, but not be the largest party. Of course, the same theorists who say all this would never have predicted the Liberal Democrat leader being so far ahead in the polls. He'd have to reach much higher numbers to actually get an overall majority. But whatever the case, it's certainly the policies of the Liberal Democrats are, on paper, very different to those of Labour and the Tories, nuclear weapons policy and other policies of that kind. So perhaps we're witnessing a breaking in the consensus.
All right, so what this looks like amounting to a hung parliament. So explain that a little bit and what that we can expect if that's the case.
So then we would expect a deal. I think, although they're not really saying it in much of the media, I think the Liberal Democrats would then go with the governing Labour Party, the incumbent Labour Party, and more interestingly, what would the Liberal Democrats get in return for their deal? Perhaps proportional representation or some change in the electoral system, which would keep the Conservatives out of power perhaps for the foreseeable future. So the Conservatives are terrified of this prospect. But then it's a case of Liberal Democrats often being accused of being opportunistic. What would they do if they were actually in power? The Liberal Democrats, it should be added, very interested in joining the euro currency. I presume not in the short term if they held some kind of coalition power, however.
All right, so putting your analyst hat again, your credit analyst hat back on for a second, Kenneth Clark, the conservative shadow business secretary, told the Times that what's going on here with this insurgent Liberal Democrat Party could trigger another financial crisis as credit rating agencies are forced up interest rates on government debt if there is, in fact, a hung parliament. Do you see that type of thing happening?
Well, we love the credit rating agencies. They're so accurate, as you've covered so many times on your series here on this channel. I don't think much care should probably be paid to those rating agencies. But aside from that, it's entirely predictable that a conservative former chancellor and now shadow front bencher should be threatening the country with an imminent financial crisis, as if we hadn't got one already, because the Liberal Democrats were to get into power. I think they would, the rating agencies, if the bond markets are taking much notice of the rating agencies right now, they probably have a problem in any case.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, if these markets were free markets, that would be one thing. But since we now understand that they are rigged markets, when you have a politician making a comment like that, it does sound like blackmail. And this is the story that's coming out more and more, whether it's in the UK or the US, is that the bankers are rigging the markets to force political blackmail. And so the rating agencies, of course, have been a party to that.
Seems a lot of blackmail going on at the moment.
Yeah, well, it seems to be endemic all over the world. And because markets over the past 20 years have become so easy to manipulate, because now there's so much program trading and computer trading, you don't need to have guys on the floor of the exchange actually buying and selling. You just program the computer to do the fraud for you. So this high-frequency trading scandal of Goldman, for example, they just program the computer, hit the fraud button, and it does the work for them. So that's why it's become the barrier to entry to fraud.
Top secret software, though. Top secret software, isn't it, that proprietary trading stuff?
Yeah. They don't want to share the secrets with anybody because, of course, then everyone else would be getting into the fraud game as successfully as Goldman Sachs has gotten into the fraud game. So it's the secret sauce that keeps Goldman in those Christmas bonuses. Now, speaking of the financial crisis, the biggest victim, Goldman Sachs, alleged fraudulent subprime CDO, is the Royal Bank of Scotland is the biggest victim. $841 million on the debt deal that they took as a loss. Gordon Brown says there should be an investigation immediately. Is the FSA likely to...
Goldman deny all this, of course, and they posted healthy bonuses, certainly, this week, it has to be said. I think they deny it, and, I own part of that bank, RBS, that you just mentioned. But,
you're a UK citizen.
I didn't get much say in that. Who did the due diligence on that is what I want to know. Did some of the rating agents, did Cazanovs do some of the due diligence on the deal when RBS bought ABN AMRO with this with this strange financial vehicle attached to it?
Well, what we were told is that there was no time to do due diligence. There was a crisis. We had to do a shotgun wedding right away. Due diligence is for losers.
Well, that may be the case, and of course, we got to now work out whether other banks are going to get involved with these regulatory authorities, because there is a theory going around that if Goldman's is investigated thoroughly, other banks may follow suit. I think Merrill's is in one case as well, and then of course Goldman's lawyers could say, "You see, we were just playing the market like other banks. It's not anything particularly unique, so why pick on us?"
The question is, Ashton Ratanzi, is Gordon Brown going to really go after these guys, or is he just paying it lip service?
You see, I'm not sure that some of his cabinet colleagues would be too pleased about going after Goldman Sachs. I know that there are some theories going around that Goldman Sachs, just as a corporate entity, could threaten a nation state. But aside from that, if the governing Labour Party don't get in, or there is some kind of coalition, I would assume that some members of that cabinet would want to go on to work in the financial institutions. And Goldman Sachs, what do they say? No one ever got fired for hiring Goldman Sachs. I think they're quite a powerful name to get involved with when it comes to regulatory power. And as for investigating the deal itself, I wonder how good the accountants at the Financial Services Authority, that's the regulatory body here in London, would be at investigating all of this.
Yeah, well, Greece couldn't get rid of Goldman Sachs. They brought them in. They cooked their books in 2000. They've destroyed the economy. They destroyed the banks. They're now suffering the consequences of austerity measures from the IMF. When I do interviews down in Greece, I ask them, when are you going to get rid of Goldman Sachs? And they just say, like, we can't. They're here. They're stuck.
Well, that might just have been another Goldman Sachs mistake.
No, it's not a mistake. It's a financial innovation. It's a thing of beauty. It's art. It's financial art. It's like Picasso. He said, art is a lie that tells the truth. Goldman Sachs is the fraud that tells the truth about currency and money.
Well, of course, but the big worry in London, I suppose, or at least the muttering is, could Goldman Sachs actually threaten a nation state for this kind of investigatory, these sorts of investigations? I don't know what they think about it in New York. President Obama seems to be serious, but I think we'll have to wait, won't we? Because after all, quite a few Goldman employees in that Treasury Department over in Washington, D.C.
Now, speaking of United Kingdom as a safe haven for dubious activity, tell us what Tony Blair has been up to since leaving office.
Well, obviously he's been saving the world as Middle East envoy. I don't think he ever even went to Gaza, but he's been helping. Well, he's really been helping his bank account, hasn't he? J.P. Morgan Chase is the company that he's apparently going to do some business, helping that bank, which I think was helped by the U.S. taxpayer quite a lot, thanks to the top funds run by that Goldman Sachs executive Neil Kashkari. So I think well, if I was his real estate agent, I'd be lending him more money to buy even bigger houses right now.
So, yeah, in the UK, Tony Blair, he's made $2 million in oil contracts, $10 million advising Koreans on oil contracts. Clearly, the war in Iraq was blood for oil. Clearly, if this were the U.S., people might be a little bit more outraged if Bush were so overtly out there cutting deals for big oil and with marrying Iraq to big oil companies in the way that Tony Blair is. Why in the UK it seems that their public is completely tone deaf at this point? Are they just Tony Blair fatigued out?
For some reason, the mainstream corporate media in this country aren't covering this story about Tony Blair seemingly personally benefiting from deals made because of his decisions to go to war against Iraq. I don't know why the corporate media aren't interested in that story, and you are, Max, but as far as I can tell, he seems to be making a lot of money. I'm not sure how hard he's working. He did make one stop here in the north of England in his old constituency to help his old political rival, the then Chancellor of the Exchequer of Britain, to say everyone must vote for the incumbent.
What about Parliament? Shouldn't they have a say in all this?
I don't think it really works like that in terms of former prime ministers, and I think if it did, he might take citizenship somewhere else. I think, he could move to Kuwait or something.
Yes, that's true. So anyway, Afshin, we got to cut it off there. Thanks again for being on the Keiser Report.
Thank you.
I want to thank my guests, Stacy Herbert and Afshin Ratanzi. And if you'd like to send me an email, please do so at keiserreport@rttv.ru. Until next time, this is Max Keiser saying bye, y'all.